We'll call the meeting to order. Can I get a motion for the approval of the September 23rd, 2025 minutes? Linda and Brandy, thank you. Go ahead and vote.
I like refresh every time. Yeah, read the constantly refresh. Yeah, it does. Because I'll be like, where I'm at, and then it'll, yeah, it does that.
Have a good mindset.
All right, the motion carries. We'll move on to for informational items. We have the ETSB here today, right in front of me. How are you?
So the ETSB continues to provide support to our 3 dispatch centers, Peoria, Martinville, and Stark County. Projects from Stark County is pretty well complete, and we're continuing with adding a 20th radio site in Elmwood to increase coverage in that area of the county, and then that'll be in 2026, and then upgrading our microwave system, which has been up in the air since 2014. So that's all I have to report.
Any questions on the projects that they continue to work on at the ETSB? Okay, well, that was easy. Thank you much. Move on to the public defender.
Good afternoon. Kevin Lowe, the Chief Public Defender, Peoria County. We start with a little bit of staffing news. 3 months ago, I told everybody that we had made 3 job offers to 3 entry-level attorneys who had all accepted our offers. Unfortunately, only 2 of the 3 passed the ball, so we had to let go of 1 of the 3. However, we do have 2 of the 3 remaining who will be sworn in next week. So we are very excited to have our 2 new entry-level attorneys who will be starting as full-time, full-fledged attorneys next week. So with those 2, our full-time attorneys will increase from 6 to 8. So we'll have 8 full-time attorneys. That includes me. 11 contractors. That will bring our total number of attorneys servicing Peoria County to 19. In addition to that, of course, we have our 4 support staff. Our office manager, Kristen Collins, who is here today, our receptionist, our paralegal, and of course our client advocate. So in other news, stick with our client advocate there, Allison Gibbs. She and her husband have a farm. So they're farmers here in the area, here in central Illinois. And apparently she had been nominated by members of the Illinois House of Representatives to be one of the top 20 farmers under 40 years of age. Okay? And apparently she won this prestigious honor here in Illinois and then moved on into this national competition where she placed in the top 15. So we are really excited about that. So we all understand in Central Illinois the importance of agriculture, and it's really incredible to see something like that. Somebody in our office participating at that level. And so what are the ramifications then of placing top 15 in the country? Well, she, along with the other 15, apparently this January are going to represent the United States in Egypt. They're going to Egypt, and this is part of the USDA, United Soy Board, soy checkoff program. So it's really neat, and we're just really happy to make that announcement. So in other news, office news, it kind of pales in comparison, I guess. But you know what I've been doing last week? I gave a presentation over at Bradley University. I was a guest speaker at their criminology class. That was a lot of fun. I encourage community outreach whenever possible for elected and appointed officials. It's good to share knowledge whenever we can. In the past, Judge Kale has spoken to this particular class, and Judge Donahue, I believe, is going to speak with them next week. And of course, I also volunteered at the bicentennial celebration downtown here that we had. That was a great success. I really enjoyed that. I was all afternoon. I was there at the rock climbing wall, helping out the little kids who were climbing up the wall. That was a lot of fun. Otherwise, my report once again has all the applicable case statistics. And this quarter, I'm not going to bore you going through each and every one of them. What I will say, my observation is that the caseload, as far as the numbers of cases that are being assigned to the public defender's office and the percentage of overall cases that are moving forward, remains relatively steady. There aren't any big changes in that. As far as the more serious first-degree murder cases that I started tracking a couple of quarters ago, we are right now in Peoria County, we have 45 first-degree murder cases that are pending, 42 of them moving forward. Three of them I think two of them are waiting for an attorney assignment, and the third is on warrant status. And so 42 are moving forward. Of those 42, we are currently pointing to 27 of them, represents approximately 64.3%. So, problem-solving courts, there's going to be an addition in my report come next quarter, I believe, or the quarter after, because Peoria County will be adding our juvenile youth court, our youth opportunity courts. That will be a new problem-solving court that will be added. We just had another organizational meeting about that with probation, Chief Judge Gorman, Judge Kale, me, and Jody. And we believe, at least tentatively, that that's going to be scheduled on Wednesday afternoons a couple of times a month. So that's something we can look forward to as well. So thank you very much. And if there are any questions, I'll be happy to answer.
Can you tell us, as we head into the budget discussion, and for those that are maybe members of the public watching, about how many cases your office touches from year to year?
From year to year, that one, I didn't bring my final report for last year where I actually tallied all of that. But when you, the numbers that I've been doing, when you look at I can tell the percentage. So basically, across the board, as a rule of thumb, the public defender's office is going to handle approximately 85% of all cases that move forward. Now, the cases that move forward are a little bit lower than the actual number of cases that are filed. The number of cases that are filed is going to be reduced because there are a number of cases that are dismissed. There are a number of cases that just sit there. They don't move forward because the person might be on warrant status, or they're simply waiting to come up to their arraignment. But of those that eventually get to the point where they're arraigned and they're actually moving forward, as a rule of thumb, you could say that the public defender's office is going to be representing 85% of those people across the board. Of course, that'll vary from courtroom to courtroom. I like to make a good point that in the DUI courtroom, well, that's our lowest level of participation. We get appointed least often in DUI court because of the demographics of the folks who get charged with DUIs, the amount of money they have to hire private counsel. Typically, you're seeing about 50% of the client or the defendants in that particular courtroom hire private counsel. So PD is appointed only about 50% in that courtroom. But then you contrast that to, say, the misdemeanor courtroom. In that courtroom, consistently you're seeing numbers where we're appointed to 95% of all the active cases in that courtroom. Felony courtroom, it tends to be between 80 to 85, usually closer to 85%. And all of that averages out to be about 85% across the board. As far as the raw numbers, I just don't have those figures off the top of my head,
That's fine.
but you can see on I think the last page of my the case filing statistics report, so table number 7, you can see that our case management system has done a projected year total for various categories of criminal cases. We project in criminal felonies that we're going to have a total of 1,036 filed, in the misdemeanor court, 1,293. And these are all categories that we handle. If you go down to the grand total, it looks like 15,699. Now, we're not going to be representing 85% of that gross number. It'd probably be closer to about 70%. Still, we're touching an awful lot of cases in Peoria.
Thank you for your hard work. Any other questions? Yes, Danny.
Just while Kevin's there, I wouldn't mind asking if you're able to briefly discuss, and this is a budget-related question. There were a few board members that had contacted me in regards to how you do contractual employees, and I was curious if you could talk about what things you think about when you're writing a contract and how they differ. I know we talked about that in budget hearing. You talked about different skill sets, caseloads that all are taken into account for that. Are you able to share that with us today?
Are you asking about the actual assignment of cases to individuals, or are you talking about the staffing decision, whether or not to try to bring on additional contractors versus full-time?
Staffing decision, and how do you get to a number when you're deciding what someone's compensated for when they're a contractual employee?
Well, the contractual amounts have been kind of set in place for a long time. You just go back decades to when I started as a contractor back in 2001. We had a set amount for the juvenile contract. And then in 2004, when I transferred to the felony division, there was a set amount for that particular contract. And as far as the model that we use, has remained the same. We base it on the division that a particular contractor might be going into, such as felony courtroom versus juvenile. And it's just steadily, the contract has just gone up over the years to reflect increases in inflation, increases in cost of living. So we basically try to do our best to keep that under control, to look after the county's interests, but at the same time, make sure that we're paying enough to compete with Tazewell County, which is right across the river. As I've said before, we've lost a good number of our contractors to Tazewell County because we're at a competitive disadvantage. They're able to offer certain benefits that we can't offer here in Peoria County. So essentially, our approach is to just have a contract that keeps Peoria County competitive enough, but at the same time doesn't break the bank. And I hope that we're doing that well. I hope that we're striking that appropriate balance. Certainly, inflation's been a big issue over the past 10 years. And I know when Judge Bach, when he was the chief public spender where I was for a good 6, 7 years, those contracts did not increase once. So we had to make an adjustment at a certain point. I remember talking about that maybe a couple of years ago. We did make that adjustment upwards. And that was really to reflect inflation and to make sure that we remained competitive. And I hope that answers your question.
Yeah, you provided that detail, like I said, during budget hearing. Again, there were some questions from other board members, some that are present currently and some that aren't. So I just wanted to make sure that we opened up that opportunity for people to hear it directly from you, but also ask questions if that generated any.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yes, Member Ricker.
Maybe to tag on to that, probably 2 successors before you, we made the decision to move it in-house versus all contract. And if I remember right, we had somewhere in the low 20 contractors or attorneys at that point. And the goal was we were going to bring in full-time versus part-time contractors. So as we bring in full-time, we'll reduce the part-time contractors, and it's not really a one-for-one. So if you're a part-time with a part-time load versus a full-time, I don't know if it's a 1.5 to 1 or whatever ratio, but I think I understood the answer you gave, Member Phelan, of for the contractors that we have contracts with. Yes, I understand the cost of those individual contracts need to be market adjusted. But I guess my question is, have we reduced the number of contracts and the need for external? Because the goal was to bring them in-house and have full-time. So I guess, do you have any data on how many contracts that you had 3 years ago prior to you to today? Have we reduced the number of contracts and the overall cost of the contract?
Yeah, I don't have that particular data with me. I'd be happy to look more into that for the next time, the next quarter, to give you more information about it. If you look at the longer term, and I know I talked about this during our budget meeting as well. For example, in the final year of Tim Penn's contract, if you look back to 2013, I think that was probably more around the time frame that people were talking about the conversion from full contractors to a full-time system. That final contract with Tim Penn authorized him, along with 36 assistant public defenders. So you're talking really about the number 37 as being, I think, the operative figure that in 2013 had been authorized, right? And then you look just 12 years later, and we're talking numbers in 19. So I think the long term, over the past 11 to 12 years, I think we've been pretty successful in reducing the overall numbers, at least the expectation of what we'd be using as far as attorneys to serve as Peoria County. Now, has there been a significant savings on the contractual line? I don't know. I'm gonna have to crunch those numbers. I'm gonna be happy to do it for you to the extent that I can.
Yeah, and again, maybe I'm not stating it accurately, but more of it was to be initially a one-for-one, take the cost of inflation and the cost of the inflation out, and say, okay, we're one-for-one, we're bringing them in-house, going from part-time to full-time. We should be a fairly steady cost. Then you add the cost of living and other on top of that. But I guess I want to see, have we shifted those costs internally and reduced the number of contracts needed externally going forward? Because we just don't want to carry on the same contracts over and over, because we lose the benefit of what we're trying to do by having better service internally. The whole goal, in my perception, when we started this whole thing, was our clients were struggling to get good service. Not that the attorneys were providing poor service. It was they had to go to the attorney's office or another office. So there was never okay, come to the public defender's office here in the courthouse. We have offices and set up, and we're efficient, and we're right here. So that was part of the benefit. But the whole goal was to reduce the number of contract attorneys. And I guess I'm struggling to hear that we've done that.
Yeah. I mean, no, certainly. There's no doubt in my mind that we have reduced the number of contractors that provide legal services here in Peoria County, and to the extent possible, we'll be reducing that further. Now, as far as the numbers of contractors, I doubt very much that we'd be in a position to reduce our overall numbers. However, there are some contracts, and I've talked about this again in the budget committee meeting. We have a number of contractors who handle multiple contracts, and we anticipate now with a couple of additional full-time people that we'll be able to take some of those contracts and bring them in-house. There is an issue I think that we run into, and I discussed this again at the budget meeting, and I talked to Judge Gorman about before I went into the budget meeting, and that's what we get to this, I call it a logistics issue. We get to a point where we reduce our numbers so far that we are at such a minimal level that on certain days we cannot appropriately staff all the courtrooms that are running simultaneously. And you'll have that in particular on Thursdays, because practically every criminal court and every juvenile court is just kicking full force. And you also have that on Mondays, because Mondays, most of the criminal courts have jury calls. So all of our people are accounted for. And so I can't say that we can reduce our levels, our overall levels any farther. But I do believe that there can be some cost savings regarding reductions in individual contracts. Incidentally, we're going to be at 19, and what I had told the budget committee, I'll tell everybody here today, when I talked to Judge Gorman and we looked at all these issues, we believe at this point of time that 20 would actually be the appropriate number to service Peoria County from the public defender's office. It's called the magic number. So I'll just throw that out.
Thank you. Thank you for looking into that. I do recall when we were bringing more in-house, we knew we weren't going to eliminate the need for contracts, that wasn't an option. But yeah, if you could bring those numbers forward to the next committee, that would be great.
Yeah, I'll do my best to get some additional information.
Thank you. Any other questions? All right. Thank you for your update.
Thank
We
you.
have Becky, I believe, from PCAPS.
Hi, good afternoon. All right, just a couple of quick updates. We are actively hiring an animal control officer for the team, and we are interviewing through the applicants that we have for our administrative assistant position that has been posted. And we are celebrating Animal Shelter Appreciation Week next week. And next month, we will be bringing forward a couple of resolutions for donations and a bequest. And in an effort to keep it brief, that is all I have.
Thank you. Any questions? All right. Can you give us a brief update on the mobile unit?
Yeah, mobile unit is running great in our relationship with Brown Animal Hospital. This week was a prime example. Dr. Davis, who was our regular doctor that Dr. Brown sends to do our surgeries, Dr. Davis had to take a day off, and they even found us a relief doctor with very little notice, and that was wonderful. Our relief doctor was able to step right in and do as our doctor would do, and actually even do a few more surgeries than our regular doctor had taken on. So things are going very smoothly. We're doing, I would say, about between 15 to 20 low-cost spay neuters for the community-owned animals, and then our regular spay neuters for animals that are being adopted out of the animal shelter as well.
Great. Well, thank you. No questions? All right. That was easy. Thank you. Move on to our resolutions, starting with our public defender COLA for 2025. Can I get a motion? Member Phelan, and a second. In a second. Member Renault, thank you. Are you handing? Oh, thank you.
Okay, so the resolution that's before you is the resolution to give a COLA to the full-time public defender. We are mandated to have a salary of at least 90% of the state's attorney's salary, since we do have a full-time public defender. The state's attorney's office, or the state's attorney, was given a 6.1% COLA this year in July, and so we need to increase the public defender salary to meet that 90% requirement. So this is the resolution.
And we would have done this when we did the sheriff's, but there was a delay in the paperwork, so that's why this is coming separately. Any questions on the COLA? Great. No questions? Go ahead and vote. Thank you. Are you waiting on anybody? All right, motion passes. Thank you. We'll now move on to our budget items, and I'd like to take each one individually. No, I'm kidding. We will take them all together, but of course, break everything apart. If there are questions, we'll stop as we go along. So can I get a motion to consider our budget pages? Thank you, Member Williams and Member Phelan.
So today's meeting will cover the Public Safety and Justice Committee budget for all the departments and funds that roll up. Yep, the remote died again. Oh. Well, okay, we can still go on. We don't need technology. For the overall budget, the general fund is recommended at $64.2 million in revenues with $1.2 million in planned use of fund balance reserves to match the $64.2 million in budgeted expenditures. And then for all funds, $172.5 million is recommended in revenues. And that includes about $18 million in a planned use of fund balance reserves across all funds, and $172.5 million in expenses to match. Okay, this slide shows all of the departments and funds that report up to the Public Safety and Justice Committee. Revenues are recommended at $27,129,739 and expenditures at $61,963,301. Revenues are 17.58% of the overall budget and expenses are 35.91%. If we add in which I'll explain shortly, the $1.9 million that are budgeted in vacancies for positions in the public safety committees. Those are currently in the general county budget. The expenses will increase to $63,876,496, which is 37% of the county's entire budget. This slide shows you the revenues, the change in revenues over time, and the sources of those revenues, along with the changes in expenditures, and the different categories such as personnel, capital, commodities, contractuals, and transfers. For sources specifically, overall, the sources are anticipated to decrease $1.3 million or 4.6%. A large portion of this is a reduction in the general fund transfer to the Juvenile Detention Center. It's a $775,000 reduction in the general fund transfer to use a planned spend down of fund balance reserves that have accumulated over the years. The coroner has an increase, pretty significant increase in revenues due to a proposed forensic pathologist position and the revenues that are associated with that. Obviously, there are also corresponding expenses that we'll see on the next slide. PCAP's revenue is anticipated to increase about $100,000 in 2026, and that is due to an anticipated increase in fees from a fee study that we did with Bellwether. That is also reflected in the sheriff's office budget and the coroner's office budget here. And those, due to the timing of the committees, are coming forward to the Finance Committee meeting next, the fee proposal. Okay, next slide. Uses are also increasing $1 million. If the vacancies that are budgeted in the general county are filled then they will increase $2.9 million, not just the $1 million. Um, some increases to note are, again, the coroner's forensic pathologist position, which is offset by the revenues. And the sheriff's office did a spend down of their inmate benefit fund last year to cover about $300,000 in medical pharmaceutical costs for inmates, and that has been shifted back to the general fund this year. I want to cover the personnel, the new proposed way for us to budget for vacancies. It was recommended that we track personnel vacancies separately in the budget this year. So essentially what we did is at the time of budgeting, we took all new proposed positions and all existing vacancies at the time, and we tracked them in a spreadsheet, which is in your finance committee packet, and took the total of those salaries and health insurance that are budgeted within the departmental budgets, and we transferred those to a new account in general county general fund. And this was only done for general fund departments. So instead of budgeting within each individual department, they're budgeted in a separate place. The resolution will come forward to you that would grant the county administrator authority to transfer the prorated amount of that salary and health insurance benefits if they apply to the departmental budget when that specific position is hired in fiscal 26. So we have a tracking mechanism internally, and we'll work between finance and HR to track the specific positions that were requested in the budget. And for those positions that are filled, the prorated amount will be transferred to the departmental budget. Any remaining in the general fund at the end of the fiscal year can be used at the board's discretion, either roll back into the general fund reserves or, whatever the board wishes to do with those funds at that point in time. The total amount of this is just over $2 million. And 1.9 million of that is in the Public Safety and Justice Committee. That's why I wanted to bring that up here, because it's a significant portion of the budget. For the staffing on this slide, there are requests for an additional 6.25 FTE in Public Safety and Justice Committee departments. One is for a forensic pathologist position in the coroner's office. This will be covered by revenues from other county coroners. It was included in the budget because there were letters of intent from other county coroners that are going to participate and utilize the services should the board approve this model. And if it is passed at the board meeting in November, there are intergovernmental agreements ready to be signed by those corresponding coroners. It does cover all of the expenses, including IMRF and FICA. There was a decrease of 0.45 FTE in PCAPs just from a reallocation of existing labor that went back to county administration. The sheriff's office has a net zero increase in FTE. While they are adding 2 new FTEs, a payroll billing clerk and a full-time bailiff supervisor, they have eliminated 2 of the 10 open correctional officer positions. So there's still 8 vacancies in correctional officers that are budgeted in that other account. But the net increase on FTE is flat. The state's attorney has requested 1 FTE in a second receptionist position. Courts administration is requesting a full-time domestic violence probation officer and a youth opportunity court officer. I will note that a portion of labor was reallocated for senior management out of court administration a portion of it to the juvenile detention center to allocate for labor that should be allocated to the JDC. The public defender has added, requesting to add one full-time assistant public defender, and then the juvenile detention center has, it's recommended for 2 new employees to screen at access points. Next slide, please. Okay, so this slide shows the recommended budget and personnel. Again, pointing out that there's actually an additional $1.9 million in salaries and benefits that would be related to this slide should all 100% of those positions be hired in 2026. Within that, the vacancies, just in case the board is curious, I had a question on this beforehand. In court admin, it's about $30,000 for 0.3 FTE. That's for a shared grant writer position that was approved late fiscal 24 that has not yet been filled. And then the other 0.3 of that is in probation, and another 0.3 in the state's attorney's office. In probation, there are 2 FTE included in this $2 million for about $190,000. Public defender, while 2 of those positions have been filled, as Kevin previously mentioned, all 3 of them are currently budgeted at the time the budget was created in this vacancy part. So on January 1st, those funds will be transferred over to the public defender budget. But that was $263,000. The sheriff's office, there are 16 FTE, 8 of which are correctional officers for almost $1,100,000, and then the state's attorney, 4.3 FTE for $356,000. If you have other questions, I'm happy to attempt to answer them, or any of the others representing the departments here.
Because I think we have everybody represented by somebody here. So we can start around. What questions might you have? Member Phelan.
More of a comment to something that Heather said, which was that if the vacancy fund had money in it at the end of the year, it would be up to discretion of the board. Obviously, I was very interested in pursuing this idea, and I think it's something good. However, what I would say is the sheriff has been very financially responsible using those leftover funds. And so I would like to recommend that they stay with the committee for discretion to be used rather than go into the full board, which would give us the ability to continue to make repairs out of the jail if there were funds left in that vacancy fund at the end of the year.
We'll look into how to do that. In the meantime, any other questions? Yes, Member Ricker.
I'd like to first off compliment the coroner's office for this initiative. It sounds like it's a good opportunity to utilize our facilities. I've looked through the numbers. They all look well in place. Obviously, the work behind the scenes is started. The contracts will need to be done once this runs through. I guess at a high level, my ask would be maybe a quarterly basis to this committee. Just kind of give us a progress of how well are you tracking on expenses and revenues with those contracts through the year? Because I figured there'll be some ramp up to get started, and just keep us informed of kind of, is it tracking where you thought it would? And that way we're all aware, because it's a newer concept, but I think it has merit. So thank you.
All right. Thank you. Anybody from the coroner's office want to speak on that? Come up to the microphone, please.
We can stand too. I always learned in leadership that you hire people smarter than you, which is what I did with Ben. And I really want to pay homage to Ben and the effort that he's put through to put this into motion to get us here today. It is a ton of work on his part, and I'm very grateful for the work that you put through. To answer your question, Steve, I think though that answer is going to ebb and flow with the volume of the other coroner's offices, scheduling those autopsies, that will depend on how much revenue we get out of that and how much expense comes from that, if that makes sense. And you can speak to that too if you want to, Ben.
Yeah, absolutely. It changes. Just a month ago, we were under what we expected for the year, and then we caught up in 3 weeks' time. So it's just really hard to predict that. However, with the morgue that's new, and also this position, we're able to go out and recruit. And that sounds a little odd coming from the coroner's office, but there are counties that we've lost over the years, well before Coroner Harwood, because of our facility or the opportunity to store. People are coming from long distances, and so we've had conversations with the Bureau County Coroner recently, and even the McDonough County Coroner that used to use us in the past, well before this administration, but with the cooler and freezer at our old facility, we could store 8 decedents. I know there's space for 12, but we couldn't use 4 of the spaces because we had no lift to get to them. But now, comfortably, without making any modifications, we're at 31, so it's very easy for us to attract new customers, as I call them.
The other thing I want to point out that wasn't asked is we are 82% finished with our accreditation process, so which we're hoping to have done by the end of November. That accreditation really speaks to, number one, the quality of the build that we had done in our new building, the quality of the work that we're putting out from a forensic standpoint, and really the overall work that we're doing on a best practice model. So we're hoping that we can use that accreditation to attract more people into our building. That's huge.
Member Ricker, did you have a follow-up? No. Member Elsesser?
No, I think that's very good that you guys have the other counties participating. Is my understanding financially, but is it based on how many autopsies they do? Or are they going to kick in so much percentage each year, even if there isn't many autopsies?
It really is just based on the number of cases that they're doing in our building.
Okay, very good.
Thank you both. Any other questions? All right, we can move down. Any questions for the sheriff? Okay. State's attorney? PCAPs? Courts? Seeing no other questions, we go ahead and vote. While we're waiting for our system here, I'd like to thank Heather and all the entities that worked on this. There was a lot of discussions, I know, and a lot of juggling of numbers. So thank you all for the time that went into putting this together. All right, we have all voting for, I'm sorry, with the exception of Member Williams voting opposed. Move along to discussion. Any discussion? Yes, Member Williams.
I'd just like to make a comment about why I voted against this. It's the staff count, main reason. So Member Daly and I have been very adamant about keeping the staff count down. And, you know, there were various departments within this budget that did not do that.
As we move forward, feel free, we'd be happy to go to those departments and see what those positions that you'd like to look at are doing currently. Any public comment? Miscellaneous? We're adjourned.